smoking, it's a revolution. Revolution, revolution. Shots to your head, it's an execution. Execution, execution. It's being us versus the corrupt. Red dot, put a cross to your head. Let the Lord interrupt. Interrupt, interrupt. Gun smoking, it's a revolution. Revolution, revolution. Shots to your head, it's an execution. Execution, execution.
Woo! Let's go.
What is up, Liberty Goons? We are back in the same place we were at
Last night.
However, we have another guest.
We do. This is crazy. Two days in a row.
2 days in a row with new people.
Yes. So, in case you guys don't know, we're at Goals, Gun Owners of America. This has been a crazy event. So before we get into that, make sure that you guys go like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that freaking bell notification so you guys are aware of when we're dropping new stuff. But I'm just gonna go ahead and hop into it, man. The news for today is all about goals.
Yeah.
So
why don't we let our guest introduce himself first?
Yeah. Go. Well, I was getting ready to actually. That's exactly what I was about to do. So go ahead.
You were going right into goals.
No. That's I was about to ask him.
We're not good with guests, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
I haven't said anything.
So go ahead and introduce yourself, and we would love to know what. This is your first time going to probably one of these gun conventions.
This is the first time for us. Yep.
Yep. So awesome. I want to know what your first time experience is with this, and go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell the Liberty Goons who you are.
All the good stuff.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, there's probably a lot of you. My name is John Minelli. I am the president and founder of a company called Stiff Lip Supplements. You may have seen it on the podcast a couple times. With this totally not staged product that you can get on stifflipsupps.com. But thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's super cool.
Dude,
finally get to talk to you guys.
Stoked to have you on.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a product placement job here because
not planned at all.
Not planned at all. I'm tired of shit.
That's what we're here for.
Obviously, this is well planned. The first time I did it was not planned at all. I just was like, hey, I need one of these.
Yeah.
You guys see how freaking fat this thing is? That is a fatty load right there.
As soon as it hits your mouth, dude, that thing is
It's a
juicy.
fat load right in your mouth.
Girthy
load. I'll go do this.
So my question to you is, what did you think about Goals?
I really liked it a lot. This was our first time going to a non-business expo.
Yeah.
So a lot of I was at the PAC Expo last year, which is like manufacturing equipment and how to like build out a production line. This was the first time ever that like I was able to go to like a 2A rights and advocacy convention. And it was really cool not only being around like-minded people who support the Second Amendment, but like also it gave me more optimism about the direction this country is going in, because there were so many people that believed in the Second Amendment that were there and were proud to like obviously see what new vendors were putting out and see like, hey, this is the new optic or the new suppressor that's coming on the market. But I saw a lot of really patriotic Americans that were proud to be armed in this country, which is always a cool thing.
Yeah, did
That's
you know,
a good rundown.
Yeah, did you know that this was the first one that's actually been opened up to the public?
I've heard this.
That's the NRA, but NRA is we're not going to get into the NRA. But as far as this goes, I mean, being able to actually go and meet with people, hear these speakers, this is the first, and this is the first time that Gun Owners of America is doing this. So it's like you're kind of part of history, you know?
It was cool.
It is super cool, right?
I will definitely be back next year. We were kind of going back and forth about possibly getting a booth. I don't know if that's going to happen yet, but
dude, totally should do it.
It was cool.
And
I was very impressed.
And I think it's actually pretty affordable compared to all the other stuff.
Like a SHOT Show or something bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe, just maybe, depending on where we're at, maybe we'll go in on a booth with you.
If maybe we're a baby, take care of it until it's
a baby. Maybe we'll sling some Liberty Goons and some 2A Patriot merch.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be definitely really cool.
I'm glad you said what you said there to open up, because that's the way I've kind of felt. And I was talking to my mom earlier today about what the vibe was like, and the vibe is very much like a positive, everybody should carry to protect themselves. You know, the only negativity comes when you start talking about government overreach and things
Sure.
like that. But other than that, I think people have a misconception of the 2A community as we're like these wild, backwoods Mississippi, we just want to kill shit and blah, blah, blah. And like, you come to our conventions and it's very much not like that.
Not at all.
The speakers dressed to a T, I mean, suit and tie, like these people.
These are professionals.
These are professional people. And did you get a chance to get to hear anybody speak?
I did not. I was too busy hanging out with you guys and then doing some other behind the scenes stuff. But
Tomorrow, definitely.
I will.
Because I will tell you this much, and
I wish I had stayed longer.
John stayed for a little bit. We watched Jared from Guns and Gadgets talk. Incredible. In case you don't know, there's about 10 million gun owners in America right now that are unregistered to vote.
Really?
So, and he had a great, commentary on this, that if 3% of those gun owners were registered to vote, it would be, we would win every single thing that's possibly imaginable.
And this is the unfortunate reality that we live in, that something like the Second Amendment has to be seen through the political realm and become politicized in the way that it is. We're here because we're obviously a super patriotic company. It's kind of interwoven into who we are. But the Second Amendment and patriotism are linked to us, and I'm sad sometimes that it has to be viewed as a Republican or Democratic issue.
It's a patriot issue.
When in reality, it's an American issue.
Yep.
And I think Americans ought to be armed in every circumstance and have every legal avenue possible to obtain firearms safely and legally.
Yeah, I always say this: it's not a Republican right; it's the people's right. And that's how we all feel. So.
I mean, if liberals and Democrats and whatever other party, communist, socialist, whatever you want to talk about, if they don't want to arm themselves, that's their prerogative.
Yeah.
I could care less whether they do or don't. To be honest, I would tell every single one of them they should
become armed. Yep.
You know what's crazy? So when you left, so I got to hear a big panel, right? And there was a chick. Shout out to this chick. Her name's Diva, and she was saying, "Look, I am a lesbian. I'm black." She's like, "I'm the person that you would never expect to be a gun owner. Let's just put it simple,
Right.
And she goes, she was basically saying, this is not about anything. This should have nothing to do with politics at all. She's like, this is about protecting yourself.
Yep.
Fighting, making sure that you can fight your way out of government tyranny. And it was like so mind blowing to me, because I was like, a person like that really helps the Second. And being a woman, and then obviously the whole panel, I was trying to film it because I was trying to show my fiance. I was so excited because I sent her the video.
Right.
Because it's talking about like the hat that I bought her, right?
Right.
Gun rights or women's rights. And I just thought it was incredible getting to hear that, that panel. So, and then tons of families were in there.
Yep.
And they're
saw a
getting
bunch
to
of
hear
kids.
that. There's a bunch of kids.
Yep.
And it's like, we really need to change the future, and the only way to do that is speaking with kids and making sure that they understand the Second Amendment and why it's so important.
Like Keith's kids are like two of the coolest kids. The 2A boys
Oh yeah.
are like.
And I will say this, of the kids that were there that were playing with toy guns when they were there, I was happy to see that even at like 6 and 7, they had trigger discipline.
Yeah.
That they had their finger indexed over their toy plastic gun, which we're laughing but saves lives.
Yes.
Lives.
Because the amount of kids that have played with guns thinking they are toys.
Yep.
The education starts when they're early, and I think that starts with exposing children to firearms in a safe way and realizing that this is a tool, and a potentially harmful tool, but is a life-saving tool.
Yes.
Yeah, and obviously, like somebody like me, I'm in a much different situation than you are about to be in. You're about to have a child.
Yeah.
Oh, congrats, man.
Appreciate that.
up.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So this stuff really matters to me. So
Yeah.
the women's rights things for guns, right? All this stuff. I'm like, kind of getting sappy, but because I already have I'm in dad mode now.
As you should be.
But like, I'm a single guy that I live by myself. I don't really have visitors very often. I have a small apartment. I don't have to have the most discipline with where my firearms are.
True.
But that's not the case, like you were saying. Like,
If you have a 6-year-old.
yeah, if you have a 6-year-old, if you start teaching them right away, Mike Glover goes in and talks about this with his kids a lot. And I think it's amazing that like expose your kids to it. And people think that exposing firearms to kids when they're younger is like glorifying like violence. And it's not at all. Like
No.
like nobody is glorifying violence. Like I bet you like Keith doesn't talk to his kids about like going out and shooting people.
No.
You know? You're talking about most of the time, especially with young kids, like hitting targets, or maybe when they get a little bit older, shooting deer, and like, you know, nobody's saying like, hey, let's go and shoot people with these things.
No.
You know, and then as they get older, you start talking into self-defense scenarios and things like that. But like, you slowly bring them into the process. And I think you're exactly right that it has to start when they're young.
And that's a beautiful thing. I didn't see that. So like just to even hear that, like kids like finger off the trigger until they're pointing.
It's important.
Like that just shows me that like there's really good parents out there.
Yep.
And that's been ingrained in them already.
100%.
So that gives me a lot of hope.
Dude,
That's awesome.
We had a lot of fun today.
I had a blast.
I had a blast. If you guys want to see like true convention coverage, head on over to 2A Patriot Ranch, because we did like
A ton of stuff.
We did a ton of stuff. We filmed a bunch of interviews and stuff. Don was our cameraman.
Which I'll be honest with you, at one point in time I wanted to drop the damn camera.
We were at the Swamp Fox booth, and
they were giving me shit. They're like, oh yeah, by the way, the man behind the camera
can't shoot, can't see.
And I can't say anything back. I'm like, all right, fuck you guys.
Those guys are super cool again. I just realized he has an H in his name too.
Oh, wow.
I have an H in my name. I do have an H in my name.
Uh-huh.
What do you mean by
That's
that?
kind of a problem.
Why is that?
Well, it's been a beef throughout goals this week.
Between Johns.
Yeah, between Johns right now.
Okay.
Because I'm John with no H.
I am John with an H.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been the issue with all the Johns that we've met this week.
Yep.
Okay.
But we have found common ground.
Okay.
That you're a John with an H. I'm a John without an H. We can agree that we both hate people that are Jonathan with an H.
I would concur with that.
See?
And I'll say this, dude or bro or hey you also works really well with me. So,
Yeah. In a private setting. I hate it when I'm at work
yeah.
and somebody calls me dude or bro.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, did your mama not teach you any respect?
Yeah.
It's sir, mister.
Yeah. It's very different. I mean, I feel like that way too, because even when I'm at work, because unfortunately, I'm not going to tell you guys where I work, but you know, there's people that are basically fresh out of college. I can't understand anything that these kids say.
No.
And when I go to work, I mean, I know on here I'm not very professional, but when I go to work, I try to
Button it up.
We have a professional side too.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't even understand the language anymore.
Sure.
It's crazy. It's like way out of control. So
Yeah, I mean, he's younger than us.
oh, how old are you?
So I look a little older. You guys are not offending me at all. I kind of caught this my entire life. My shaved head and beard don't do me any favors either. I'm 27.
27.
Yep.
Okay.
But I've always looked 35 from everybody I talk to. So
Let's see, you're 27. You were 9 years old when I got out of the military.
yeah, sounds right. Dude,
Wow.
I will say this though. I catch myself feeling older and older every day. And I think this is kind of the age when it starts. Because what you're doing with me right now, I will do with kids who are 19 or 17
Exactly.
as well. And I feel like I'm 74.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You were just finalizing your ABC test when I went to Afghanistan the first time.
Yeah. And that shows how long that war went on. Because I was in
Exactly.
pre-K when the towers went down. So I don't really remember any of it. But I was 22 when I was in Afghanistan. Or no, I'm sorry, 23. So
It's wild,
yeah,
right?
full
I
circle.
was in high school.
That's
when
two
the towers
different
went down.
generations
Yep.
of like people going into the same environments, like crazy. I mean, I guess I was probably 18 or 19. I was 19 when the towers went down, I think. And I was stationed in Vegas already. I was stationed at Nellis, and he was pre-K.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It just shows you like the military-industrial complex has been getting paid for a fucking grip.
I can guarantee you we didn't see any of that.
No, you guys didn't.
No, we didn't see any of that.
But they did.
They did. You know, we've talked a lot about those wars on here. You know, we've talked about Iraq pretty in depth,
Yeah.
and the wool that was pulled over all of our eyes on that conflict.
I wasn't around for that.
Yeah, that
I
was a
wasn't
little
around
bit
for
before.
the weapons of mass destruction that didn't
That
exist.
didn't exist.
Scare.
We make fun of George Bush a lot here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like, as you should, because like, to have that happen and to have it be a nothing burger and to invade a country over it is obviously wrong. I will say this because I don't think he gets enough credit for it. My life has been empirically better because of President Bush. He has done more for the benefits of veterans than any president that I can think of. And I would say the people that are in my age demographic, their biggest complaints when it comes to finances are education, the cost of education, the cost of housing. And the benefits that I earned, along with every other veteran or guy that served, addresses those two specifically.
Yeah, absolutely.
My life has been better because of the post 9/11 GI Bill
Yep.
and the VA housing loan. And in my opinion, the only man to thank for that is President Bush.
Well, we actually talked about this too, and even he's the one who stopped the sunset clause.
Yes.
Sunset clause, I'm not familiar.
Okay, so that allowed us to be able to have semi-automatic weapons again, ARs in America,
Oh,
AKs,
shit. Okay.
you know, anything that's more than 10 rounds. Because before that, Bill Clinton, they had the sunset clause, and that essentially stopped us from being able to own like ARs for 10 years.
Yeah, it was about 10 years.
That was the first AR ban,
Yep,
correct?
the first
Correct.
one.
Under
Yep.
his administration.
Yep. So he did some good things.
He did.
The problem is he also sent a bunch of young men to war that
Yeah.
some of them didn't come back.
Yeah.
Well, it
That's
was
true.
more. I think that was even more Cheney, because of his connections than probably
Yes.
Bush.
Yes.
Brought up a very good point.
Yeah.
However, if we're gonna put blame at Obama's feet or at Biden's feet or at Kamala's feet
Yeah.
because they were president or they were vice president, then we're gonna put it at
No, of
George
course.
Bush's feet
I mean,
too.
fair is fair,
Mhm.
right?
I think it's a politician issue because, like, Nancy Pelosi obviously catches a lot of flack today for somehow having a better performing stock portfolio than Warren Buffett, than the guy who reads balance sheets and profit and loss statements all day long. She can somehow.
Well, that's why she's 150 and not out of Congress,
Sure. Right. Yeah. Um,
because she's profiting. So
Before I was doing the business thing full time, I was a defense contractor. And what that means in layman's terms is I was a private citizen who worked for a company that provided a service to the federal government.
Right.
Okay, so the analogy that I use with this is if you're the federal government and I'm Raytheon, now RTX, I believe,
Yeah.
we would negotiate on a contract to perform service X, and then we settle on $500 million or
Right.
something crazy, okay? So then me, Raytheon, has to go out and hire people who know how to perform this service that we just agreed upon. I was one of the people that Raytheon, in this analogy, hired. And in the Dick Cheney era, he was vice president at or around the same time that he was president of a small company called Halliburton,
yeah, just a
tiny
small, tiny little
startup,
company.
which conveniently was awarded a lot of the logistical contracts for the recently kicked off G1. And now on contract, there are what are called prime contract holders and sub contract holders, meaning like a bigger company like RTX or Raytheon in this example will have, let's say, 60% of the pie, and then smaller companies like I can't even think of a name, but a smaller defense contractor company would then get a smaller piece of that pie. And the reason why that has to occur is because of former Vice President Dick Cheney awarding a lot of these contracts to companies that he had relationships with.
Hence War Dogs.
And I think
this is exactly
it highlights it's not like a R or D or red or blue issue.
Yeah.
This is a politicians are lizard people issue.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I just hope that the American people addresses the corruption piece that is on every side of the aisle in Congress right now.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. You know, when I was in and we were working with bomb technology, and I'm sitting there and we'd be working with Raytheon or It's been so long, I forget a lot of the other ones too, like
Boeing or
Boeing and Lockheed and
Northrop Grumman.
Northrop Grumman, and we'd be out there and we're like working with like JDAMs. JDAMs are like GPS guided bombs, and like the technology we're using that they were awarded contracts for is like 30 fucking years old.
Yeah.
Like I'm using like a dot matrix freaking computer.
Yeah, that's not
like to like do like GPS coordinates into a freaking what's supposed to be a highly sophisticated weapon.
Yep.
That's insane.
With cables that like don't work, and then the greatest thing is that these companies then, for the most part, they don't have to spend any money on training, because all they do is they hire people like me and him that the government already trained to work on the systems that they already built. So like they hire people that are already trained in technology or whatever it is. And so they make even more money, because any other company that would want to do something or make something new that people weren't trained for would then have to invest in training and development, which is obviously one of the most expensive parts.
R&D, essentially.
Yeah.
And the security clearance.
Yeah,
all of
to
it.
get clearances. Yeah, they get free clearances because we come out of the military with usually still active clearances.
Cleared and ready to go.
Yeah. Which is like such a moneymaker.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on it? Like, because obviously the military industrial complex, like President Ike was talking about that damn near half a century ago, more than half a century ago. And it's still, that is very much not a conspiracy theory. It is alive and well to some level. Do you think it was a net positive for the country with the military industrial complex existing in the manner that it does?
It was for a period of time.
Okay.
So coming out of World War One, and this is right around World War One and World War Two, is when we're going to call it the universal military industrial complex, because if you look back at really how this kind of stuff started, it started in Europe as the Russians started to come through Eastern Europe, and the Nazis are coming from the left, the Russians are coming from the right, and the people that are caught in the middle in these Eastern European countries had to basically pay to stop these invasions.
Okay.
So what they ended up doing is they started paying rich governments to come in and take over. And in order for them to take over, they had to generate armies and militaries and weapons and tanks. So when the Russians were trying to come through, basically Hitler came to power because the people in these Eastern European countries went like, this guy, we can just, he'll be our pony, he'll be our monkey, he'll do whatever we want him to do.
Okay.
So we'll give them the money, and they built this up. Well, then after that all happened, then, well, we know how that all went.
Sure.
Yeah.
After that happened, people took a look at that and said, wow, that worked like really well. Like if we propped up governments with this military industry to, under the guise of preventing war or stopping war, that it was super successful. So what we look at now as the cabal of the world, you know, the rich elite, and the military industrial complex are like this. They're hip and hip because at one point they were one and the same.
Yeah.
And to some extent they still are, you know, one and the same. So was it a positive thing 70 years ago? Absolutely.
Okay.
It helped prop up the United States of America during a very, very tough period.
Right.
You know, that's actually what got us through the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. And I think even Eisenhower, right, even when he was leaving office, he was even saying like, yeah, we have this and this is help, but this could be the biggest threat to America. And he was specifically talking about the military industrial complex on like, yeah, it's good, but like it could potentially be like absolutely devastating for America.
A Trojan horse.
What do you think?
I have been on both sides of the both military and industrial complex, and I think that gives me an interesting perspective on it.
Sure does, yeah.
So like we were going back and forth about War Dogs.
Yeah.
And I think that movie in a lot of ways highlights true parts and also Hollywood exaggerations about what this thing is.
Yes,
Of course.
Um,
It's a movie at the
Even
end of
those
the day.
guys. Even have you seen any of the interviews with
the actual
the actual
guys, I have not.
Yeah. So the not the Jewish guy, the other guy.
Yeah.
He's done a ton of podcasts.
Okay.
Like not Ephraim Diveroli, but the other guy. I can't think of his
Yeah.
name off the top of my head. And he even admits to the whole thing being very dramatized.
Mhm.
But I think you're right. It was even more dramatized in the sense of like how these contracts actually
Sure.
happen.
I think like the reason why the industry exists that it does, or really the defense sector, to be politically correct
Yeah.
about it, I think it is a natural state that arrives here. Like what I mean by that is like I think a lot of people as Americans want to have our cake and eat it too. Like we like the idea that we have the most powerful military in the world and that we have the world reserve currency being the United States dollar. And we, as Americans, at least I like the fact that we are the only country that has a large amount of military bases outside of United States borders.
All over the whole
Correct.
entire world. Yeah.
And all that requires infrastructure and manpower
Mm-hmm.
and funding. And unless that there was a conscription model that was akin to South Korea, where there was mandated service into the armed forces, I don't think the United States military would quite literally have the manpower to run this machine.
Okay, that brings up a great point, and
Mhm.
it actually brings up somebody you were talking about earlier before we went live.
Mhm.
Eric Prince's philosophy is put it in the hands of PMCs,
Yep.
and they can do it more efficiently, quickly. They can gear up faster. They're better at training.
Mhm.
They're better at finances because they have to have profit and loss.
Yep.
The reason that the military sucks at a lot of things,
It's the DMV.
because we spend a lot of money.
Well, and it
Yep.
doesn't matter if they fail or lose; they'll just keep dumping more money into it.
Right. Whereas a PMC, like
Correct.
Blackwater back in the day, they also were a business.
Yeah.
And I think too, if you like, when people envision a tank or a C-130 or any sort of weapon system that is in the United States military arsenal, I think if you start viewing them as products, the model starts making more sense. Like the first 5 minutes of the opening scene to War Dogs.
Yeah.
There is a dollar value attached to every uniform, every
Yeah,
round,
Yeah, it was like
Rounding,
30,
yeah,
like
yeah.
$30,000 to suit
every
a
tank that exists in the DoD, right? And the military does not have the engineers or the people that are smart enough to be able to design these things. So enter stage left Raytheon. They will design a missile that will ultimately be handed over to, we would use the term blue suiters or military people to actually run and maintain the weapon system, but that has to come from engineers at Raytheon. And the other thing that I would say too is like, the reason why the United States has the capability that it does is because these weapon systems are so advanced from a tech perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And the analogy that I would always give with this is GPS. Like during
Yep.
the Gulf War era, the first guys that were able to leverage GPS were military dudes during the invasion of the Gulf,
Mm-hmm.
where when sandstorms were so crazy that soldiers would put their hand out in front of them and not be able to see their hand in front of them because the sandstorm was so crazy in the desert at the time, American assets were still able to shoot, move, communicate in those situations because of the newly invented global positioning system that at first was invented from a military benefit that later found its way into everyone's pocket.
Yeah,
As-
ATAC and even
And
more
now
sophisticated
I
systems.
can't find a grocery store unless it's on Google Maps.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of these products, they start out as missile chips for
Yeah.
Raytheon and eventually end up in the pocket of everybody. And like, I just wish people had more insight on it because I think it's fun to beat it up a little bit. But like with anything, reality is a little more centrist.
So yeah, I mean, just to what I was talking about with like the JDAMs and stuff, like I was putting GPS units in Mark 82s before I had it on my cell phone to drive my car.
Right.
You know, I was guiding non-nuclear munitions with GPS before anybody could find a grocery store with.
Yep.
That's crazy.
I'll nerd out for just a second. I promise I won't talk in acronyms. So
I just did, so go for it.
I was a cyber transporter in the Air Force. That's a very Air Forcey way of saying it, network dude or network administrator. We made computers talk to one another at scale. my job was to take an Air Force installation's worth of computers, and the vernacular we use, give them the infrastructure or the pipes to be able to talk and share with information with one another safely, securely, etc. The model that we still use to talk about that process, it's something called the OSI model. It's how the internet works. It was designed by the military over 70 years ago to take remote nodes of intercontinental ballistic missiles and give them the ability to share and communicate with one another. And that idea ultimately became the internet, because these were remote sites that needed to all launch at the same time, meaning there needed to be some sort of framework where packets would be able to share information between one another. And that framework ultimately became how computers work today.
So what we'll do is, because us and our listener base have a very much low intelligent base.
Oh, me too.
We will put a translator on the bottom of the screen to translate what you just.
Okay.
No, I completely understand what you're saying, and like, because you were, like, say when you were in Afghanistan, you were using that same type of infrastructure to power up comms there, right? Because if I remember, well, you were a little bit after me, but like, I remember in Iraq, we were using like line of sight communication still, and like if there was a bad dust storm or there was a mountain in the way, you were losing communication between one forward operating base and another.
My so I would love to get into this a lot. And I think it's worth being said, because like when I was in Afghanistan, I will say, because it's important to say, I was not serving. I was a defense contractor that was seeking money and adventure. And I happily went. But I spent 4 years in the Air Force as a cyber transporter, and then when I found out that I could do this this defense contractor job
and make more money,
this was the only thing and grow out a beard. I mean, are you kidding me? So I was a FSR, or a field service representative, for a company that provided a service that ultimately would take kill feed or video feed from what we would call fast-moving aircraft, A-10s, F-16s, or an AWT, an air weapons team, like an Apache helicopter. And at this point in the war, there were very little American forces that were outside of the wire on these FOBs. So all the strikes that we were doing were through air assets. And what our product gave the customer, or the military in this case, the advantage of, was I could give a JTAC, or a controller. That's the dude who's talking into a microphone saying cleared hot, talking to the airplane in the sky.
Badass dudes.
Yeah. Building like restricted airspace and pulling assets, and like ultimately saying, hey, kill him. I would give him and the ground commander, that is the person who ultimately puts his initials on the strike package and says, we're going to forward this up to where Bagram, or whatever the big chain is. And then also in our strike cell, my imagery data between the airplane in the air and then the feed on the ground, the handshake that occurred, would also be viewed by what's called a PED, or an imagery analyst. So this is a person who can look at feed, or has the training to look at feed and make what are called assessments. Where if we had drawn feed in front of us, the only thing from a legal standpoint that we could say is, I see 3 packs or personnel moving with long cylindrical objects in a military formation. He actually has the training to say, I have made an assessment that these personnel on this imagery feed are more than likely enemy combatants. And I have made that assessment because, to use their terms, the totality of the circumstance. This is personnel that are moving in an area of known enemy operations at night. And I have other tools in front of me that link into their radio chatter or other collection that we're doing at the time, where I can then pass that assessment off to the ground commander to eventually put his initials on the strike package to get routed up his chain of command, and then say, kill him, don't kill him. So I was the deployed tech guy in all of that. You
made sure those handshakes happen.
I brought that video from the F-16 overhead down into the strike cell to give all these players in this situation the ability to watch this and get better fidelity. as to what was occurring on the ground in real time.
That's a fucking exciting job, bro.
I-
That's a fucking exciting
Bro,
job.
I'm going to speak frankly for a minute. When I found out that they were going to pay me money to do this, I had a hard on for a week because
I would
all
too.
of this just sounded awesome. And little did my company know that I would have done this for free. Like, because it was a tech itch that I got to scratch because I just like tech stuff and computer
Mhm.
stuff. And when I found out that I could live and work in like not only like big logistical bases, but also like 4 deployed like combat outposts and forward operating bases, and get to work with dudes who I used to play as in Call of Duty. Like this
Yeah.
is, I would have done that job for a lot longer. The Afghan pullout happened, and defense contractors went away because our footprint shrunk down a
Right.
lot. But
That's a perfect segue, actually. So you left, right? And now, because I want to know what made you want to start Stiff Lip.
so I was in Syria of all places, and I can't say where. I don't mind speaking about where I was at in Afghanistan because
So
we're no longer there.
You and
But-
I need to have a
One-off.
one-off because I actually just said the same thing to him
Okay.
on a podcast 2 episodes
Yeah.
ago about the same country.
Got it.
We'll have a
We still have Americans there, so I want to
Yeah.
respect OPSEC even
Yep.
though I'm out of all of this, right? So I was in Syria, and one of the common headaches that occurs when you are in a deployed environment is none of the water is palatable. So
Yep.
you can't drink the water because if you do, it will kill you. And then what that also means is like all your dishes that you wash also have to be washed with like water bottles that are in a big pallet on the other end of the cop, to include shaker cups. So the only thing to kind of do when you're deployed is like lift a lot. So I would take pre-workout all the time. And it got annoying to wash this thing.
yeah.
So also at the time, I was taking note of the people that were around me and what they were like. Everyone was a junkie in the gym and was either dipping or trying to quit dip, myself included. And also a very high caffeine and stimulant user. Like the type of dude who takes pre-workout and on his way to the gym is drinking a Monster.
Yeah, that's what I just did.
Yep, our people. Okay. So,
Right before this.
and I'm noticing like overlap between this. So I'm literally standing in the gym at this cop and going like, man, if I could just dip my pre-workout, I wouldn't need a shaker cup. It would probably work a lot better because your mucous membranes, or the delivery system of this, is far more efficient at delivering whatever substance you put into your body. It's also part of the reason why the nicotine high that you get from chewing tobacco is actually stronger than it is from smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because of your mucous membranes. It puts that substance directly in your body faster. And I wanted to leverage that for caffeine because I missed having something in my lip during my workout.
Yeah.
Like my pre-workout used to be a pinch of Copenhagen,
Yeah.
and I was trying to quit like everyone else. And I just knew that if I could put all these pieces together, I would have something cool.
Yeah.
The problem arose when I would call up supplement manufacturers who make supplements at scale in the form factor that like we all know, in jars and powder, where
Sure.
you
Yeah.
take a little scooper, put it in a shaker cup,
Yep.
or dry scoop it if you're
Yeah,
really
I was
crazy.
gonna say.
So I called up, and I'm not exaggerating, like 70 of these places, and said, hey, instead of jars and powder, I want to do pouches that you put in your lip like dip. Can you do that? And I got the same answer over and over again. Like, hey, kid, great idea. But guess what? I don't have any of the machines, infrastructure, logistics, training, or know-how to do that.
Yeah.
Best of luck to you. But I knew I could do this. So we ultimately built a manufacturing chain in-house to be able to do this. And I built a supply chain and bought ingredients and designed labels and built the website in my spare time from a laptop in Syria. I spoke with lawyers on an unclassed, dirty nipper line that was a SATCOM system where you heard every
Yeah.
other word, and built a company. And then
Crazy.
3 years later, I'm on a podcast with cool dudes drinking cool beers, telling
Dude.
stories.
That's a fucking phenomenal story.
Yeah, and like you nailed it because I'm sitting here and it's whatever time at night and like I'm fucking jacked with this thing in my lip right
Good.
now.
Happy it's working.
Yeah. Man, like those are those once in a lifetime ideas that we all kind of wish we have.
Yeah.
Like, how'd you come up with the flavors?
So I always, funny enough, one of the pieces of this was to design a formula, because you can't just buy pre-workout. You need to design like a formula. In order to do that, you have to work through a chemist. And the chemist that I ultimately ended up working with, I was going to do one flavor initially. And she was like, hey, this is my minimum buy-in. So I could design 3 flavors for you. And I said, well, we could probably bundle it in like a multi-pack or a 3-pack bundle. And that's ultimately how we landed on the All-American multi-pack. That's our most popular
Red,
product
white,
on
blue.
the website. Yes, where we sell cherry popper, blueberry stuff, and then Fruity Flicks is like a white monster.
It's my favorite.
I picked that flavor specifically because it's the only monster I drink, along with every other Brovetti person in the world. So I knew guys would like it, and I packaged it in a 3-pack bundle.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. I was telling you before we went on live here. I struggled to figure out like when I was supposed to put it in, because like with pre-workout, everybody knows slam that shit before you head to the gym, or if you're one of those people, you can kind of like sip it as you're at the gym or whatever. Yep. I think those people are weird, but like whatever. I was just a slammer. But with this, it's a little bit different because I knew the delivery would be faster. Obviously, we like our other things that come in these type of containers.
Sure.
I put those in also on the podcast.
Just in your lip or in other places as well?
I mean, wherever I got mucous membranes.
Yep.
And so I knew it was going to go faster.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, I don't want to do this while I'm like walking to the gym, because I'm going to get halfway through and like just bust out in a run.
Sure, right.
Right now. So I appreciate the advice, everybody. The master says take it about 5 minutes before you start working out.
Yep. Yeah, I would compare it to like a slow drip of caffeine that you get into your bloodstream. And the reason why this delivery system is so great, in my opinion, I'm pretty biased with it, but you have a lot more control. So when you take pre-workout the traditional way, you're kind of on this roller coaster. And if it becomes too intense, well, you just kind of got to ride it out because you have consumed all of it. Within a pouch, though.
It sounds like cocaine.
Yep. You can put it in your lip and like
I'm here.
discard it if it becomes too intense. You can take the source immediately out.
To be honest, I did the first time.
Really?
I
Well,
did.
that means we're doing our job right.
I did, and I think it was because I had drank a ranch fuel in the morning. Shout out ranchfuel.com. And I think I still had a little bit of
jitters.
Jitters coming
caffeine
from
in your
it.
system.
Yeah, but like it tastes so good.
Oh yeah.
Like
I appreciate
so
it.
good. I mean, it's better than any other pouch that I've ever used for anything else. And like you do get that like that hit from it. Like I don't know why anybody would want to use any other type of pre-workout now. And I know I won't give it away.
Please.
Unless you want to talk about stuff that you got coming up.
There's a couple big products in the pipe that we're going to design. Part of the reason why we did this big rebrand we were formerly known as Send It Supplements, and we since transitioned to Stiff Lip Supplements. A big part of the reason why that occurred is because we want to create a whole line of dippable products from the pre-workout as it exists in its current form. We also have a beta line coming out soon. So for guys that want that pins and needles
So that's
sensation,
that's where I was going there.
we're gonna pack a lot of beta alanine into the pouch so that guys can have bees in their teeth whenever they want it.
I like that because that leads me to say what I was going to say there, which is I don't know why anybody would use traditional pre-workout.
Yeah.
Because
I would agree.
this is the type of pre-workout that I would use, which is like pretty like just even keel. But every once in a while, when I want to freaking go balls to the
You
wall,
want to go? Yeah.
not to be confused with Tim balls,
Tampon ball.
you know, you want that beta alanine, and you want to go crazy with it a little bit, and it gives you that little extra pump. So, anything else you want to share that you might be coming out with this in this line?
Right now, no, and that's
All
really
right.
a promise to our customers because, like, I don't want to say something in a public forum that I can't deliver on. We own the manufacturing process for this, so it gives us a lot of flexibility in what we can do and how fast we can pivot. But I always just want to, like, excuse the corporate speak, just deliver exceptional products to our people. The mission of this, and always has been, to caffeinate as many hardworking Americans as possible. And we take that mission very seriously. And I don't want to put out a shitty product if it doesn't work well. So I don't want to tease things that are ideas right now that may not come to fruition, but we have a lot of really cool stuff planned. At Stiff Lip Supps is the best place to follow us. On all socials, we're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.
And you guys are funny as shit on
Oh,
social
I
media.
appreciate it, bro.
I was just scrolling through that stuff. There, it's hilarious.
It's funny as shit.
That's me being a meme lord in front of my computer, just trying to be funny.
I freaking love it. If you guys end up in the nicotine vertical,
Yeah.
I'll come work for you for free.
So what I've learned about that is that's really tough.
Yeah.
What I have learned through like the legal system is the only companies that can sell a nicotine product are like a Philip Morris or a Big Tobacco.
Yeah.
And they have written laws into Congress saying that they are grandfathered in as those companies.
It's kind of crazy. It's like a monopoly.
Yep. So small guys like us, the two-man Brovet show, can't
Yeah.
sell a nicotine product, whereas Big Tobacco, only the Marlboro man can sell you your nicotine.
That's insane.
So how many of you are there in the company?
Yeah, so I started this company when I was in Syria, and then shortly thereafter, I knew that the only person who was going to be obsessed about this at the level that was required for this was going to be my dad. I was overseas at the time, and I needed someone to fill orders for us. So I brought my dad on, and it's been one of the coolest parts about this because, I mean, I'm talking about the dude who showed me how to be a man for the first 18 years of my life. And to see him go from someone with zero business experience to where he's at now, just being exposed to this world and maybe show him a thing or two about how business works. It's been so cool. And
That's awesome.
in the early days of this, if you placed an order for us, Dave, my dad, was the dude who put it in the pouch or in the baggie and wrote you a note and sent it to you. So this has been a labor of love. Like we're not only a small vet business, but we're also a family business.
That's what's awesome. That's what I was gonna say. A family business. I
Yep.
was not expecting to say that it was your dad was part of that,
So-
which is crazy.
I tend to take my stepdad. He taught me when I was younger, don't ever ask questions you don't already know the answer to.
Sure.
And I knew this because his dad followed me on Instagram.
Yep.
Oh,
This sounds like my old man.
Well, I had no idea. So
Yep.
that was. I mean, I was just like, whoa, okay, like
Mhm.
that's a cool story,
Yeah.
man. That's a super cool
He
story.
he has coming up on 3 decades of law enforcement experience. He is a retired Chicago police officer.
Badass.
So he has the ability to speak to cops a lot better than obviously I could with zero law enforcement experience. He was in the military as well. He was a reserves guy out of, I believe, the 85th ARCOM in Illinois. He was a combat engineer. And he was in the 80s and 90s. I went in obviously way later. So I, from a social ability, have the tools to be able to speak to younger bro-vetty people a lot better. I lean on him quite a bit for how to talk to cops. Because even though, like I always say this, even though there's a soldier on the logo of our product, this is not just for soldiers. This is for cops. This is for junior enlisted troops that are standing in formation getting screamed at for shit they didn't do. This is for teachers that are corralling 30 shithead kids they don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
This is for plumbers that think Zyn is a multivitamin. Like, this is for hardworking Americans. Yeah.
Well,
Oh, that is fantastic.
that's awesome.
That is fantastic.
This is why he has the business before, because I couldn't have pitched it better than that. you
But
know?
No.
That's us.
Yeah,
No.
that was fantastic. I do have a question for you though.
No, please.
Since we are at goals,
Uh-huh.
Okay.
if you had to pick
Hmm?
2 weapons, what would they be?
I'll say this because I'll give context around this. I funnel a lot of my firearm purchase decisions that I don't have because I lost all of them in a boating accident. These are totally hypothetical. Around my capability as a shooter. Like, I think a lot of dudes, and like, by the way, like, if this is your jam, like, this is America. If your dollars are green, you should buy whatever you want to buy.
Amen.
I think there's a lot of guys that spend a lot of time like obsessing over the new optic or the new AR that Daniel Defense just dropped. Like, they get lost in the sauce of like the new product that just dropped, when in reality they should still use the same AR that is sitting in their closet or gun safe, and then just buy 3,000 rounds of 223 and get really good at drills and
Yep.
get your groupings tighter, like, to improve your capability as a shooter. And that kind of like, I base a lot of my firearm purchase decisions through that funnel. Like, does this increase my capability as a shooter, or do I just want this new optic because I saw it on an Instagram page and it looks cool? So I carry a Glock 17 every day, appendix carry with a T-Rex arms holster because they're fucking awesome. Like, shout out to those guys; they make really good stuff. And I carry that with a Surefire X300 light on it, and then I'm thinking about getting an Aimpoint Acro optic as well because I've always shot irons my entire life, but I have shot with an optic on a pistol a couple times, and it's tough to like get my bearings around it and get my capabilities dialed in. But I know that like once I figure that piece out, then my capability as a shooter will raise, and I need to put the reps in for it.
Yeah, it's
And
definitely quicker.
I prioritize my pistol training much more than my rifle training, because if I were to employ some sort of weapon system in a life-saving event, I would be going to pistol first.
Yep.
Sure.
And because of that, the majority of my range time is with
A pistol.
my Glock 17.
Yep.
But I love ARs are cool. Like I have a BCM like 16-inch rifle as well. But I don't spend the range time on it as much as I should. But again, in a situation that I would never want to happen, the likelihood that I would go to gun, I would have my Glock on me in way more scenarios than I would have access to an AR.
Is there a
agree.
chance? Is there a chance we could change your holster?
Okay. Why? What are your
Lucas
thoughts?
Bakken, you're a douchebag. We're not fans of T-Rex arms around here.
Got it. Why is that?
Lucas, the head honcho over there, is a terminal douchebag.
Okay.
He has belittled content creators like us.
Yeah.
He's a holier than thou douchebag.
Yeah. I think the bigger part of it is like, don't
They
get me
do
wrong.
have good products.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
doubt
Yeah.
the products.
If you guys are T-Rex fans, that's fine. With that's not the issue we have. The issue what we have is him saying that there is no other place for the Second Amendment in the media world other than traditional media. Meaning, for example, like when you're talking about guns, it should only be about like, this is a life-saving situation. This is what you're going to do. You need to run this drill. Hey, you need to, this is what this gun does. We're only going to give you just that, instead of people having fun with it.
Like PSR
Yeah.
and Dirty Civilian and Grand Thumb, he finds all of that content to be beneath.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't follow T-Rex arms as much as like other people do. I know he's a very divisive figure and has very loud opinions about like the gun sphere, gun influencer space.
Yeah,
I think the more people talking about firearms, the better.
I agree.
Like
that is our thing.
Actually, this is what we said on the last podcast. It's like there is space for every single person that's out there.
Yeah.
There is definitely space, clearly for T-Rex and Lucas Bach. I mean, he's got over 1 million subs.
Yes.
And fantastic, because I'm for anything that brings more people into the gun industry, but I also think that it's bad because then you're kind of when you start slandering other people in the gun community.
yeah, don't punch down.
Yeah, exactly, and
That
it just
sucks.
doesn't. Well, it just doesn't help what we're trying to do by advocating
Absolutely.
for the Second Amendment and trying to bring new people in.
And the funny thing is that I create similar content.
You do.
I'm a talking head technical gun reviewer.
Yeah.
I talk about a product. I tell you what's good and bad about it. I don't put a whole lot of fluff in the middle. I don't do music behind my videos, all that kind of stuff. I'm very much a T-Rex type gunman.
And by the way, I'm going to say it because you're being humble. You do a really good job, man. Two-Year Ranch is really fucking cool.
Thank you.
I'm really happy you guys reached out to us. I was elated to be on this podcast and do this with you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that,
Yeah.
man. That means a lot.
No, of
'cause
course.
You never know what your reach is or how
It's
you're
cool.
doing, But because that's why I have such strong feelings about the T-Rex situation and not even so much T-Rex, more just Lucas.
Okay.
It's not even so much T-Rex. I don't know any of the other guys.
I actually
Yeah.
really like his brother. That's on there.
Yeah.
I mean, genuinely, I really do. And I do think that they put out really great content. I don't think that it's necessarily. I'm not slandering Lucas and for the content that he puts out. It's just some of the things that he says I think are absurd. Honestly.
I'm gonna take up for other influencers that I feel have been wronged.
Yep.
And he specifically talked about two people that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
What is the Michael Jordan quote? Republicans buy sneakers too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is always kind of how I base my big like decisions around about what to share in a public forum. And he always caught a lot of flack for that quote. And I just think it's a very good way to sum up how, and then there's a lot of CEOs that share a lot when in reality you should just be about selling beer or selling holsters.
There you go.
Or selling clothes.
That's
we don't
it.
need your opinion on this one particular thing. And I'm a hypocrite of that right here. I'm a bro vet on a podcast sharing my opinions, but
I think, but
this is a forum for it.
yeah. But this and I mean, I'm just gonna walk over here because I really want to show this.
Of course, please.
I just want to show this to you guys. So in case you guys, if hopefully that focuses in. I mean, that's his logo right here for Stiff Lip. So clearly, I mean, you know, you're part of this community. So I mean, I feel like you can say whatever the fuck you want to say.
So there's a really cool story about that, and I'm happy you brought that up because it gives me the ability to shout out a really cool content creator. The guy's name, he goes by @KineticPerspective on Instagram. I don't know if the page is still active anymore, but the reason why that logo exists is because of a guy named Jake. When I was in Afghanistan as a defense contractor, one of the JTACs that was sitting next to me that I kind of jived with a little bit, he was one of the most talented artists that I have ever like shared space with, and he would always be drawing whenever we were waiting for a strike to happen, or it was a quiet night, kind of how he filled his time a little bit. And he was spinning up his company at the same time that I was. And I needed new logos and artwork. And I'm not artistically talented in the traditional sense. I don't like pen to paper, can draw things well.
Right.
But he could. And he was the dude. We were his first customer that designed our logo. And he not only has like the ability as an artist, but also like he's a JTAC or was a JTAC. I don't know if he's still in, but like has the technical knowledge to know like this is how you draw pelters. This is how you draw PVS 14s and draw them in a way that is cool and realistic. Yeah. And he designed our logo and did a kick-ass job. And you should absolutely follow him because he's a cool guy.
Yeah, shout out to that guy. Yeah, it is. It's one of the sickest logos I've ever seen.
So
especially on a puck.
Yeah. People have tattooed it on themselves.
Yeah.
No shit.
I have had 2 photos sent to me of one guy got it on his quad, and I think another dude got it on his shoulder, and it's our logo.
That's got to be super exciting to see that.
I mean, maybe I should do it.
Yeah, there you go.
It's the ultimate tip of the hat to an artist that people are like literally tattooing Jake's artwork on their body forever.
That's badass.
Nope.
Yeah.
You know what? Since we're shouting out artists, shout out to our artist, Eternal.
You guys have an awesome logo.
Eternal.
It's super cool.
This is fire.
Dude is fire. Just so you know, a little bit of drop. After we get back from goals here, we're going to be dropping a new style of t-shirt.
Oh yeah, that's going to be sick.
It's going to be sick. Same artist, same format, but maybe a little bit more.
Maybe something attached to it a little bit. Yeah. A little bit different
for you tactical folk out there.
Multicam. High speed.
I wasn't trying to say it, but you know,
for you tactical folk out there. Yeah, no, I mean, to circle back around there and close that out. Like, I think that people should be able to buy and watch whatever they want to watch.
Agreed.
And I would honestly never actually discourage anybody from watching anything. Even if you like Lucas's content, go watch it. I've watched it. You know, it's not like I haven't watched it. And to be honest, I had no opinion at all of the company. I always thought the guy was kind of a little weird, but like I had no real opinion at all until he came and fire it. And then I'm going to fire back.
Sure.
You know, I think that's why we created this podcast, was to say whatever the fuck we wanted to say. You know, we say in our opening, raw and unfiltered.
Yeah.
I'm not as raw and unfiltered on 2A Patriot Ranch. You know, that's my business. I have a purpose in that, and this gives us
the ability to say whatever the fuck we want.
Now, Don has 2 outlets. to say whatever the hell he wants. He has the podcast now, and he has his music.
Which, by the way, dude, I listened to some when I was back in my hotel room. It's fucking awesome.
Appreciate that, man.
Like, really, really good work.
And we'll have to send you some stuff that's not even out.
Okay.
I went through a situation where I was trying to leave a label for the past like year and a half, and finally that whole situation's over with.
Okay.
So super excited that I can actually put music out again. And man, I've really worked hard on some new albums that are actually new albums, not a album, but new albums.
What is the label thing like? Because I've heard it's a pain in the dick from every musician I speak to.
So, in case you guys are watching here, I haven't really talked, because I haven't talked about it on Instagram or anything else, but don't sign to a label. I was in a situation where I've had lots of ups and downs in music. Like I've had like the highest of highs and probably the lowest of lows.
Yep.
I mean, with no backing, nothing, I toured all throughout Europe, right? I didn't even have a booking manager. And we were selling out shows, 25, 3,000, 4,000 people through, Spain, France, Germany, so on and so forth. And then COVID happened.
They'll do it.
And that basically crushed things. Then my music was from, in case you listen to older stuff, it was from a very libertarian standpoint.
Okay.
And then my music started to be like, okay, well, libertarians are never going to win anything. Right? And there are libertarian conservatives that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot.
You're one of them.
Yeah, I am one of them. Shout out to Brandon Herrera. Do you know the AK guy?
I do.
So very libertarian conservative, somebody who
I would describe myself that way.
yes.
Oh.
Because I do. There's very conservative values that I do hold, and I have always held. And my mom's a big time conservative. My dad is too. I just have a little bit more of a. I just think the government should not be in any of our business at all, and it should just be the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, hands off of our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's
Amen.
So my new music that I started to put out, it got me completely removed from YouTube with 106,000 YouTube subscriber account, and then that was completely wiped.
That is crazy.
I was going through so many issues with the label. The reason why I signed to them, it was basically a marketing deal.
Okay.
And then unfortunately, they did nothing to market me. And then it was supposed to be, I put in a certain amount of money to market myself, and then you guys match that. And then that never happened. And instead what happened is 30% of my money went into their pockets, and I had zero help trying to get my YouTube channel back, zero help trying to promote anything.
No upside.
No upside. And then them screaming about me saying, oh, well, you're missing these dates to put stuff out, and then telling me that I couldn't put music out. And there's really no point to sign to a label at all. It's very tough being an artist. I get it if you're an artist, especially when you're an artist like me who isn't afraid to say things. Like I said, the song that got me completely removed, it was, I basically said, that the government's a bunch of pedos.
Okay.
Yeah, in a song, and I was talking about Nancy Pelosi, and go check it out. It's called My Wrongs, My Rights.
My favorite song.
Yeah, I won't get into the breakdown on it, but it's to the second verse, and that pretty much just like kind of wrecked my stuff.
See, that's crazy to me because, like, you just brought up YouTube, and that was a platform that for years talked about being pro First Amendment.
Yep.
And giving people the ability to share whatever they want in any medium they want,
Yep.
Until they don't agree with it.
Yeah.
Which is nuts to me.
They were pro no amendments.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. So, I mean, in the meantime, I always had a backup channel because I always said, well, what if
Sure.
this happens? So I kept a backup YouTube channel. So unfortunately, that's my only YouTube channel that I have now. But I have a ton of music that I'm going to end up releasing, and it is fiery, super
You
fiery.
got to hear the intro there. That's part of one of them.
Yeah, and if you
That's
actually
cool.
listen to that song, it's crazy because we actually talked about this last night.
Yep.
It's actually about my buddy who's kind of like helps manage some certain things for me, but the second verse is about basically a guy who, I'll just say he's an illegal immigrant that
Okay.
was being a peeping Tom, to say the least, because I don't want to get us kicked off of here saying exactly
Sure.
what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say right now.
Right.
So I'll tell you offline here, but let's just say he was viewing his kids and then viewing his wife, and then they were calling the police, and he was out of town, and this happened several times, and then finally his wife called him up and said, "Hey, I need you to come home ASAP." And he came home, and then the guy actually, as he got home about 20 minutes after that, actually broke in the window of his children's bedroom.
Okay.
And at this point in time, they're 2 and 4.
Right.
And he blasted them out the window.
As he should.
And
Yes, you should. Yeah.
they thought he was a white man because his name's Alan, but his last name's Garza. So of course we know where we are in society now. There was a bunch of flack and heat until they found out, and then it all died down and stopped.
I'm sure.
Because as soon as they found out, oh, it's Alan Garza, like, you know, all that stuff stopped. But essentially, that's what the song's about, and it's called Revolution, and it's yeah, I mean, it's
Gunshots. There's a revolution.
yeah, it's very impactful, and I'm super excited to put that song out eventually.
I encourage everybody to throw in a stiff lip
Yeah.
and then throw on some Don Welch on Spotify
Those are a good combo.
and just because that is my jam. I throw in a stiff lip, throw on Don Welch, and I am like, I'm in another world.
And see, that's crazy because, like, I'm sure his immigration status didn't help in any of the legal proceedings that he found himself in. And the craziest part to me, like, just from traveling the world, is like part of the reason I was always raised in a very patriotic household because this country is just fucking awesome. But my patriotism has grown from like my time spent in the military, and then even just like traveling, just because I really enjoyed traveling. You see in a very real way the disparity between the first world and the third world. And I don't think we have problems here. We have first world problems, and those are very different. And I don't want to assume about your friend, but I'm sure he comes from a place that is much poorer than ours and deals with a reality that is far different than what Americans think is normal. And it's just crazy to me that there are people here who not criticize America, because I think criticism is how you make this place better. It's what makes this union more perfect every single generation. But I think when they talk about it through the lens of this being a bad place, or this being a malicious place, or this being an oppressive place, that I know that there are hardworking people that through a misfortunate series of events weren't given citizenship like I was. Like, people talk about unfair advantages a lot. Like, I was born in the wealthiest and most opportunity rich nation in the world in a dual parent English speaking household. That means I won the lottery.
Yeah.
And there are people who don't. And there are people, you don't even have to leave the continent to see that. Like, there's south of our border, there are people who have to boil all the water that they drink and cook in and they bathe themselves with. And those are some of the hardest working people I've met, and would do anything to have the opportunities that I have, or the opportunities that some of the people who think that this place is a bad place.
So just so you guys know, my buddy Alan Garza, he's actually he's an American. The person that was doing this was an illegal immigrant.
Understood. Okay.
So I just want to make sure that was clear. And he also speaks English and Spanish. I mean, as most South Texan people do.
Sure. Okay. Okay.
The sad part about this story is, well, I'll just go on a little bit about it, a little bit more in detail. So essentially, he shot this guy through the window 8 times in the chest. That guy survived. Okay, went down to the fire station. The fire station picked him up. He had already called the police and told them, hey, like, you know, this is what happened. Well, he goes to the hospital, and then that guy, after 2 months, gets set free.
That's nuts.
Nothing happens to the guy at all. Why? Because he's an illegal immigrant, and they don't want to arrest him.
You know what's crazy is that you can relate this to what Pew Pew Jew was talking about with us yesterday.
Pew Pew Jew.
Shout out Pew Pew Jew.
Yeah,
we
that's
love you,
awesome.
dude. Hopefully we have you on the podcast soon. But he was saying about he was talking to us about Israel,
Okay.
and he was like, just because you have a problem with the policies in Israel or the Israeli government doesn't make you an anti-Semite.
Exactly.
Of course.
Just because you have a problem with our political system in America and you don't like our politicians or you don't like our policies doesn't make you anti-American.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
crazy. Yeah, I am so sad that it really does sadden me that patriotism has been associated with politics, and it never used to be that way. It has gotten to the point, man, where you can say with a certain level of certainty, if you see an American flag outside of that household,
They're
whether,
conservative.
whether that household is in a conservative household or a liberal household.
Yep.
And that just breaks my heart because there were Democrats who said things like, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
JFK.
You know what's so funny? Who was that you that was saying that?
Yep. That's exactly what. Yep.
We were talking about JFK and it was on our podcast the other night. And if JFK was alive right now,
He would be a
he would be
far
a
right
far
wing.
right conservative.
Yeah.
That's what they would call him. Absolutely.
Patriotism is something that I think should be in the heart of every American, and I understand that there's like a big disparity in the experiences in America. But it's hard for me to take criticism of this country seriously when it comes through the lens of this place is a bad place.
Oh, exactly.
Well, we talked about this too, and we were watching, going back to a podcast, and me and him were watching. So, unfortunately, the way that America works is that you have I'm going to call out even the conservative far right wing.
Yeah.
There's about 10% of the country, or maybe even less than that, that are super far right wing, and then there's even probably 3%, 4% super far left wing. And here's the problem: those are the only people that you ever hear about. And when you do that, and then they control things because they're really, really good at conforming groups. And then getting people to come onto their side because they have to, because they're so loud and they want everybody to listen to them. So they're really good at organizing. And then once once people invest in them, those are the things that you see. That's why you see the crazy radical stuff that you'll see on CNN, MSNBC. You'll hop on things like TikTok now, unfortunately, where you have these interest groups that are paying kids now to talk radical far left socialism ideologies and promote that. And unfortunately, when you're a kid, you're very impressionable, and that's the problem, because now that those kids, they believe that, and when they're 25, 30, 35 years old, and it's their time to start to be a member of society that's trying to basically put money back into taxes and be officially a part of society, own a home, be an adult. That's what you're gonna get, and that's a scary thing.
Well, and what that 3% of the left radical ends up doing, because they have that power and they have that media power, is they start to present those of us that are more centrist than anything as the far right. And so people like Don and I, on our podcast, the things that we say in far right circles would not be considered far right.
Right.
Yeah.
But the left will pose us as being far right, even though we didn't storm the Capitol on J6.
Sure.
Yeah.
We are not talking about QAnon. We're not talking about this stuff, and we've gone to great lengths when we were talking about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump and things like that to tell people what we knew was fact and what we
our
thought
opinions.
and our opinions, because we don't want to go to the far right.
Sure.
We are not. I actually think that the far right is anti-American. Because they hold a percentage of America in disregard.
Yeah.
And that I can't deal with.
I think you just hit the nail on the head. You talked about loud people.
Yep.
And I think that as amazing as this social media thing is, because it's how I make a living, it has changed my life, it has changed the lives of everybody.
That's what we do.
Right. But it makes loud people louder.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's like giving a megaphone to everybody, and if you give a loud person a megaphone, they're just going to shout into it.
And then you have algorithms.
Yep.
You know, Zuckerturd.
Zuckerturd, yep.
Unfortunately, creates these algorithms because then these companies are also like you might have a BlackRock funded thing,
Sure.
and these people are politically super far left wing, and next thing you know, you click on one of these videos, and now you're in a full echo chamber.
Yep.
If you don't believe me, go home and then just find something on CNN on YouTube. I guarantee you, if you scroll down, you're gonna find 10 more videos about something on CNN or something on MSNBC or whatever, something that's anti-Semitic, because now the Democrats are super anti-Semitic all out of nowhere, which is wild to me because their biggest funders are Jewish, but now they're in this massive echo chamber, and I think that's one of the biggest problems that Democrats have because they've put themselves in this crazy echo chamber where now they have to like somehow be like okay with this side but okay with that side, but there's two ideologies that are now conflicting within their own party, and I mean unfortunately I'm saying like this is probably a really good thing for conservatives because they as much as they can really group people together, and they can they're great at organization. They're also terrible ideologists, like maybe the worst on the planet, and
Yep.
once they're great at forming this, but then they have no idea how to control it.
Well, that's because they prop up people that don't have a platform, and that's what's getting exposed right now. So when you look at
They prop up idiots.
yeah, even look at the people that we've tried to expose on this podcast.
Yeah.
Greasy Gavin, Cackling Kamala, Tim Walls Balls. These people.
The list goes on.
The list goes on.
Shout out to the watch list.
Shout out to the watch list. You were taking a break from the watch list right now.
Yeah.
But because I added Lucas Bodkin doubly to the watch list the other day. But they're propping these people up that have literally zero independent thought.
Sure.
That have really zero platform. I mean, I don't know because I don't go on her website regularly, but as of a few days ago, Kamala still didn't have a platform listed on her website. The Democratic,
She still hasn't done an interview.
yet the Democratic candidate for president of the United States did not have a platform on her website. You look at guys like Greasy Gavin. He survived a freaking recall attempt in California, and he was talked about as possibly being a front runner to replace Joe Biden.
Sure.
And this guy has been a freaking disaster on all accounts. And so that's where the Democratic Party is failing themselves, and that's where the liberals are failing themselves, is they're propping people up that can't get the job done. Whereas when you look at the reverse, we've talked about the people that we think could do a good job on our side, right?
Yeah.
But that are also not electable.
Yes.
And therefore we can't put them forward. We love Massey. We love Chip.
Yep.
We love Matt Gaetz. We love Rand Paul. We love
Anna
Paulina Luna. We love Laura Bower. We love Marjorie Taylor Greene. We love these people. They're Jim Jordan.
Yeah.
We love these people. They are not electable as president of the United States.
It's unfortunate.
I think eventually has an opportunity to go there, but the rest of them right now just aren't, and it's unfortunate. And so we put a guy up like DT, that actually is electable, actually has a platform, can actually speak to a large swath of people. And unfortunately, that's just not what the other side does, because they live in that echo chamber. So they think, just to your point, they think that that's what everybody wants to hear. But in reality, there's people like us out there that are like, what are you talking about? I don't want to hear that.
Well, I like that's where companies that go woke, they die, right? For that exact reason, because these companies think that that's what everybody wants.
Who did we talk about the other day?
I mean,
AB InBev.
Yep, Budweiser. So that's what happens to these companies, right? Because they don't realize, well, they make people in these cities, yeah, sure, fantastic, and they're the loudest people, like what we've just said. But the whole rest of America is very rural still,
Yeah.
and they're not about that.
Do you live in rural America?
So I live in Colorado Springs. We're just south of Denver. It's a super military town that used to be pretty rural, but has in like the past 5 years just like grown dramatically. It's like I think there are like 600,000 or 700,000 people that are living there, and that's kind of my favorite part about it. Is it's not like a super big city, but it's also not crazy small. So traffic still moves, but like all the commodities are still there that you need. But to your point, like hot take or not so hot take, depending on like how you see it. I don't think it's as crazy in reality as people make it out to be.
Yep.
And the reason I say that is because like a big part of my job is understanding how the social media machine, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all these like multi-billion-dollar companies operate. There's this saying in tech, if the product is free, you are the product. So there's a reason why all the companies that I just rattled off, as opposed to TikTok, because they're like overseas, they're all Fortune 5 companies, I believe. Like Google's up there, Facebook is up there. Like they make a lot of money, but you can go on their website and use their product for free. Why is that? It's because every time that you engage with Facebook or you're on any of their platforms, they are trying to extrapolate as much information and data out of you as humanly possible. And the reason they're doing that is to sell to assholes like me.
Yep.
So that advertisers can put a credit card on their platform and tell people about their product.
Yep.
Right.
And I don't like doing that, but it's reality because scrolling through a newsfeed is how people, it is the new television, it is the new newspaper. It's how you tell anyone about anything.
It's your own personal echo chamber too.
Yes.
And what I've learned about it is the way these platforms work. So I forget what study it was, but like there was a study that registered emotional response in people. And I believe the way they determined this was they would show people an image while having an MRI scan done at the same time.
Interesting.
And of the emotions that registered the highest on this scale
Provoking.
were surprise and anger.
Mm-hmm.
So the way Facebook or Meta or TikTok gets data from you is by you spending more time on the platform. And the best way to get you to spend lots of time using their product is to make you angry.
Yep.
Or shocked.
Yep.
I would also throw looking at boobs in that category as well.
But is that necessarily a bad thing?
So the latter, no. But like
the latter, not the other two.
The angry piece, I would say, not bad, but like Facebook doesn't want an angry population. I think they see it as a means to an end. Because the angrier you are, the algorithms are just going to feed you more niche content based on engagement and content that they have tagged as angry to not everyone, but you specifically.
Yeah.
And like Meta has spent and invested hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into AI technology to try to bucket you as a user, to tell people like advertisers, if you want to sell this product to this, to use a business term, avatar or type of person to purchase this product, like if I were to show our marketing to soccer moms, it wouldn't sell well.
Yeah.
But if I show our advertising to people wearing multicam pants, Liberty Goon nod with t-shirt wearing Bro Betty people, like my ad dollars are going to go further. I'm going to be more inclined to spend money on their platform.
Yep.
And I think we all just get myself included, I'm really trying to like limit it, just get sucked into this social media thing. And I think a lot of people like think the country is a lot angrier than it is just because of what's on our newsfeed.
Yep.
Wouldn't we be a lot less angry if there were a lot more boobs though?
You're not wrong.
So maybe Facebook's got it wrong.
Yeah, just go pivot in the other direction.
Just pivot to boobs.
Sure, all the time.
I mean, that's what they used to do, right? Like, look at Budweiser.
It was boobs.
Yeah, it was girls on
Hooters.
cars.
Now it's chicks with dicks.
Yeah.
So we've just totally
Gone
went the
full
wrong way.
Right.
we went the wrong way. You know how clock's supposed to go this way? We went way.
Sure.
No, and I think you're probably right. You know, I think the scale of it is probably not as bad as we think it is.
Sure.
And I think, you know, even people like us, we tend to maybe maybe explode the problem a little bit more than it sometimes is. But we do it for the shock effect too, because we just like Facebook and Google and Instagram and all these things, we also need to do something that grabs people's attention so that they listen to the rest of what we have to say.
Yep.
So
I play that game.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, just like I was saying, I love your memes and I love your stuff that you do, because it's shocking sometimes and it's funny, and it's a lot less boobs than there should be.
We're working on that.
Yeah.
I don't have. I only got B
yesterday,
cups. I don't have D cups, unfortunately.
But I think that, everybody has to do it, and we do it too.
Yep.
Our thumbnails on YouTube
Are meant to grab your attention.
Yeah.
Means you're a good business owner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, we do that on purpose, I mean. And so, yeah, I think you're probably right that we do overplay the hand, but we're also overplaying the hand because these big people are massively overplaying their hand.
Yeah. And it's such a weird place to be in, even with my music, right? Because it's like, okay, for example, if you put a woman, even on Instagram, right? And I've done this before. So like, if I post a picture with like my fiance or something, right?
Yep.
Skyrocket.
Oh, engagement goes up.
Like, if I post a story with me and her on it, it's crazy engagement. And then I post a picture talking about politics. It's like, well, we're not showing this shit to fucking anybody, right?
If you post a picture of me, is it like number 2?
Yeah. It's weird. I put you first, and you get 50. I put her up, and then it gets 6,000. So I don't know how that works out, but
Uncle John's losing out.
But no, it is a weird game, right? Because it's something that you have to play, because unfortunately, the cards are stacked against you. They are, and the algorithms are always changing, which is unfortunate. And even bigger than that, then you have to deal with Congress, who is unfortunately on the far left, who's controlled Congress for a really, really long time, has really dampened our freedom of speech with bills that's been put in place, and that's affected us. And not to mention these 3-letter agents that we should all abolish.
Love your hat, by the way.
And I'm not going to get into all of them, but all of them.
All of them. Sure. All the bureaucrats.
Have what we know have now reached out into these social media companies, are involved with these social media companies that are affecting people that, unfortunately, like you said, are patriotic, and that's what's stopping showing the patriotism of our country, and they're trying to kill that, unfortunately. And you now have these, and you have crazy people that are super, super loud. I'm not saying that it's a vast majority, but that's all that you end up hearing. People that truly hate America, even with Walls, right? Walls Balls over there, Mr. Tampon. He's on his platform saying, like, you're not a good neighbor unless you're a socialist. That's a wild thing to say in America, because if you would have said that 10 years ago, you would have been, if you said, if you had stolen valor 10 years ago, forget about it. It's over with. It's a wrap.
In my attempt to be bipartisan, because I really do try to be bipartisan, I wasn't a fan of a lot of things the Obama administration did. One of the things that I was a big fan of was his decision or attempt, I don't know if it ever went through, to regulate the internet like a utility, which I think is a very good way of looking at it. Because in the same way that water, gas, and electric companies are private companies, they are utility companies. They exist in a bucket in between public service and private business. And the worst of the worst and the best of the best in America have access to water, electricity, and gas. And I think that the internet belongs in that bucket too.
I could not agree more. I don't necessarily think that was Obama's intent with that.
No, it was more, he was actually trying to regulate it.
Yeah, I think his was more on the regulation side of it. However, the way you just put it
would be the perfect way to do it.
100%. If you were running for the Secretary of like Interior,
Sure.
I would vote for you.
Yeah.
So I actually remember this issue quite a bit because it involved my old job a lot.
Mhm.
There is something in the network world called quality of service, or QoS. I, as a network administrator, can apply quality of service on my network, meaning I give higher prioritization to certain traffic.
Mhm.
Okay. I, running my own network, have that control. So, like, for example, all the information that you are watching right now on the interwebs, all of that is organized in packets. And all those packets have what are called headers and footers, meaning they are tagged as different types of traffic. Okay.
Mhm.
And the Obama administration was trying to take away the ability of ISPs, or internet service providers, because all it is a big network, the ability to prioritize certain traffic. Because what they were doing at the time, and I don't know if this is still the case, let's say I'm Comcast, and Comcast owned, I don't know if streaming was big then, but a streaming like company like a Disney Plus.
Well, they were part of Viacom, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Or like a Hulu Plus, or like
Yeah.
one of these
Yep.
like platform that where you can like watch our services. They would have the ability to apply quality of service on their network and give you a faster connection to their website as opposed to a competitor's website. Versus a utility company, they just pump gas to everybody. So the Obama administration, I believe, was trying to limit the ability of internet service providers to be able to do that. And that was always something that made a lot of sense to me,
That does make sense.
Yeah.
because you shouldn't give the guy down the street access to electricity faster than my neighbor that might disagree with me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that like all of these big companies that are interwoven into our lives, like, interestingly, more liberal-minded people are talking about them like they are private businesses, and are all of a sudden turning into staunch business advocates when talking about how
Which
Facebook
is wild.
should be able to regulate whatever goes on Facebook.
Yep.
And that's very convenient because the big powers that be just so happen to agree sometimes with political decisions that
Yep.
they are more aligned with. When in reality, these multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar corporate conglomerates, like, they're interwoven into our lives in a very like deep way.
Mhm.
Almost every product we buy is like put in front of you through one of their channels.
Mhm.
I compare me being on Facebook and Instagram as to being in the phone book.
Yeah.
Like, they are like very a part of our lives, and they are regulated in the same way that like a mom and pop pizza parlor is, when in reality, like, they are more like a public park that everyone can walk to. And that was one of the coolest parts that I witnessed about seeing Elon buy, at the time, Twitter, and rebrand it into X, and
Yep.
transform that company into a public space that anybody can walk into and share any idea, and let the good and bad ideas battle with one another to see who determines what is the best idea. And I was shocked at the amount of flack that he caught for that,
Yeah.
Which is wild.
which
Yeah.
is crazy.
But
it was freedom of information.
Yes. But I think this too, because like, okay, if we're talking about like the First Amendment, back in the day, it said, okay, we have things like the printer, or public forum speaking, and you could say whatever you wanted to say, right? Well, if you look at today's society, the vast majority, I would say that people are speaking more. There's more interaction with the First Amendment being involved in social media than probably anywhere else in the entire world, because it's vast and the world's completely connected.
Yep.
So to say you can't say this on the internet, like, or get flagged on Facebook
crazy.
for showing something, or flagged on Instagram because you showed a pistol, or
Mhm.
whatever the case is, that's the issue that I really have. And that I don't think, even if you are an owner of one of these social media platforms, this is a First Amendment site, and the government should be, I think, saying, hey, no, you actually, this is freedom of speech. If you as an owner want to own one of these companies, hands the fuck off, because now you have put yourself in freedom of speech, a place where people are talking. And that's how I look at it. And I think that's the issue that I have with, like you said, oh, this is a private business.
Right.
Well, yeah, it would be a private business, but now you've put the First Amendment into it.
Not only that, there's no alternative. Like, and I
Right.
know like regulation is such a strong word because once the genie is out of the bottle or the cat is out of the bag, it is
Yeah.
forever.
Which we find very dangerous.
Sure,
Yeah.
of course. I wasn't around for this, but my dad was. There used to be the Ma Bell Company. I don't know if you.
My grandfather worked for him for a long time.
They were referred to as the telephone company.
Yep.
There was one telephone company for the entire nation.
That's why people still call it the power company
Yep.
too.
Yeah.
Because this life-saving essential piece of technology, kind of like social media,
Yeah.
that was a requirement for everybody, was owned by one private entity. And I believe in the 70s, the United States government got involved and broke that,
Well-
at the time, like telephone company up into like different companies. And that's
If you
why
look at them now, AT&T was part of Ma Bell. Verizon
Verizon,
was
yeah,
part of
all
Ma
of them.
Bell. Sprint, part of Ma Bell.
Yep. And in my opinion, like the social media conglomerates, the three-headed Trojan horse that is like Facebook, TikTok, and like YouTube,
Yeah.
they kind of act like that. Because if you get booted off YouTube for saying things in your music that don't align with Google's idea of the world, you're no longer in the phone book. There's no way to find you.
If you talk about the streaming platform, like they
Right.
talked about the phone company,
Right.
that's what it is. And everybody else gets pushed out, which is where
Yeah.
we get into to fair market, and we get into monopolies
Yeah.
Right.
and unfair business practices, because it's almost impossible right now. Like, I work with some guys that are trying to change the system right now with Grey Hive, and they're trying to build a platform for all of us to be very free. I should actually introduce you guys,
We'd love to.
because it'd be fantastic
Yeah.
for you to learn about it.
A freedom of speech space, essentially.
Yeah, but the road is very bumpy for them.
Oh my God.
Because even us, we get a little hesitant, because I'm like, well, I get 10,000 views per video here, and I'm getting like nothing over here yet. And how do I divide my time to put the time and energy into this that I know it's gonna struggle? Now, I still believe in them,
Sure.
Yeah.
but it's the same way whether you're talking about a phone company or a power company or Google. Like,
Well, it goes to the YouTube Rumble.
yes,
I was just
YouTube,
about to say
Rumble.
that.
So everybody wishes Rumble was something bigger.
It sucks.
The only problem is you go to Rumble and then nobody's on Rumble. You know, and that
Yep.
and I'm not saying that nobody's on Rumble, but it's nowhere near comparison to what you're gonna get on YouTube, right? And that's a problem.
Yep.
That's a problem because, in my opinion, you know, it's like we all want it, but we are kind of part of that problem too.
Yes, we are.
You know, everybody, when Instagram became a thing, what did everybody do? They kind of left Facebook, right? And then what happened? Facebook said,
bought
"Oh,
'em.
I'm gonna buy you."
Well, so that's what happened. This is where I think we went afoul, is that Google should have never have been allowed to purchase YouTube, because Google at the time was a conduit to information. They were just a portal to access information. You would search for the information you wanted, and then you got that information from a conglomerate of different places, right?
Yeah.
And when they bought YouTube, now you have the portal also being the purveyor.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and that's where you have a problem. That would be like back in the day. This is how it happened, and this is why things got broken up. Is that Ma Bell also sold telephones, and they were the only company that sold telephones
And the lines to go with it.
and the lines to go with it.
Yep.
So, like, eventually the government said, you can't do that anymore, because now not only are you the conduit between people, but you're also the purveyor of the product that allows it to happen.
Right.
And so now that's what we have with Facebook, Instagram, and Google and YouTube.
Yep.
And look, we're on YouTube platform. You're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or whatever it is right now.
Yep.
But the conduit is this big.
Yep.
The conduit is huge. But the purveyors only allow this much information to go through that conduit.
Yeah.
And you're missing out on this.
This is great. I'm glad you brought. This is a prime example. So if you look up the Trump assassination right now, good luck. You're gonna have
I've
to.
heard
on
the
Google,
information is limited.
You will have to keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling until you find anything on. It's no longer the top searches. In fact, I did it yesterday, and the first thing that I found when I Googled it was Reagan assassination. I put in Donald Trump assassination, and the first.
Well, that's what they're in trouble for right now. There are congressional hearings on this now.
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, and that's them controlling the narrative, and that's the problem with what I have an issue with. Even if you are a private company, this is a freedom of speech platform. The internet, when the internet first came out, it was meant to be like no holds bars. You do as you want
Whole
on
point.
the internet. It is a free space, and anybody can freaking join it and get on there and do whatever they want to do. And that's how the internet should be, because this is how we communicate now.
You know who I blame? It's
Us.
obviously Al Gore's fault.
Oh, he invented it.
He
Algorithm.
invented it, right? He invented it, right? Like,
And what I think is a better place to place blame, and by the way, I'm included in this category. It's us.
Yep.
In the same way
Yes.
that a lot of people will talk about how awesome small businesses are, they will shop on Amazon.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
they hate that mom and pop grocery stores are closing down, but they will shop at Walmart.
Yep.
And they are doing that not only because it is more convenient and cost effective, but because it's easier. And I don't blame them,
Yeah.
because when every penny counts, I can't pay 20% more to Joe down the street when Jeff can get it delivered to my door in 2 days.
Yep.
And that's just reality.
And, well, this is the problem that we have with government,
Yep.
right? In general, because now what we've done is we said, okay, we're gonna borrow money, we're gonna spend money, we're gonna keep borrowing money, and now your children's children are now in debt, and because of that, now we have inflation. Now you can't get into a home, you can't do this, you can't do that. So what we do as Americans now, what's the cheapest, most effective?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's companies that fucking hate you.
and there's very few people that are willing to buck that trend.
Yep.
And I gotta say, shout out to Mama to a Patriot Ranch. My mom and the rest of my family, more so than me at all, they have taken a concerted effort to only support the things that they believe in.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
if she has a problem with a company now, I forget what it was. Coca-Cola did something.
Right.
They don't buy Coca-Cola products anymore.
I will say this: I didn't either for a little while, and then one day I just picked one up, and I was like, "Fuck!"
I
here we
missed
go.
that Coke.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
she does it, and my stepdad too, and they do it with every single
Yeah.
part of their life. Like if she doesn't go to Walmart anymore, she doesn't do those things.
Right.
Oh, I try not to
But
go to
they're-
Walmart.
Yeah, I try not to too. But I mean, you've been to the one at Chiefland.
Yeah, well, that's
You want to see you got to kind of go to
Bro.
that one. Though.
Oh, dude, it's a hoot.
I'm a small business owner, and every penny counts right now. And because of that, I'm on great value everything.
Yeah.
at the
Yep.
moment. And like it is what, like, when I look at the biggest problems in the United States, I think corruption is a big one, and more than that, like, we spend too much money than we take in tax revenue. And I think the reason why those two problems exist is because we, at least in theory, have elected representatives that represents the interests of like the public. And I think of not only the issues that I have, but the people that I worked with in my small sample size. And I think a lot of their life problems could boil down to not taking accountability for the mistakes in their lives and spending too much money they didn't have.
Yep.
Yep.
And
I said it. This is the exact thing I said. I think it was podcast 1 or 2. I said the government's problem is America's problem.
Yep.
We're both too fat.
Yep. That's it. That's it.
our politicians have a problem with accountability, and our politicians have a problem with spending too much money because everyday people
Have a
have
problem, with it.
with those two things.
And unfortunately, the politicians are using our money.
Yeah.
and-
yeah.
And the only way out of it is also what we talked about before, which is you can try all day to continue raising taxes and all that kind of stuff. That game is over now. We are already taxed too far to the hilt.
We're
And-
taxed
and
more
I
than
think-
socialist
And I
countries
think
are.
both sides recognize that now. So the only way to get to a solution
Gotta cut it.
is to cut it. Just like you said, hey, I
There's
have
government
to
below.
buy great value now
No.
because I have to cut it. And that's
No.
the only way as
Yeah,
Americans.
not
we're
going to
gonna get
Whole
back.
Foods if you're if the wallet doesn't show the value. If it's showing great value, that's what you gotta.
I love this quote from one of my mentors. Alex Ramosi is a phenomenal business guy. I don't know if you've seen any of
I do
his
know
stuff.
Yep.
I went to business school and read that guy's books, and I've learned more about business through his education that he puts out than anything I learned in business school. And one of his quotes is, "Your lifestyle is your competitor's opportunity." So I spend as little money as I possibly can to funnel more resources into this thing to make it grow faster. And I think that there are a lot of people that just don't view life that way. I don't understand necessarily why, but I think a big part of it too is like what is important to people. Like my goals are very unique to me.
Sure.
I don't know. I think it's very easy to beat the drums of like our politicians suck and no one takes accountability for anything and they're spending too much of our own money, but the people who normally bring up those critiques don't have their own finances in order.
Well, I think that even the bigger problem than that, and which, if you look at it, okay, so the government tells you, I mean, let's just say the left, definitely, they'll go around and say, this is a perfect example. Kamala Harris, yesterday, came out and said, I'm going to give every single person $25,000 for a new home.
Sure.
$25,000. Okay, that, of course, if you're a 20-year-old kid and you just got out of college and you're like, you look at your bills, you're like, are 21 years old or 22, however old you are, and you're like, holy shit, I have to pay for a car now, I have to pay for a cell phone, life hits, right? And then you hear something like $25,000,
right?
It's like immediately everybody's like, well, fuck my taxes. I'm getting taxed to death anyways. Yeah, I'll vote for that, which is insanity because they don't realize the effects that's going to end up having on you, and it's going to keep raising inflation. Even worse than that, what our government does is they promise you a bunch of shit, you never get it, and then they take that money and they spend it on shit that you will never fucking see. For example, the Ukraine war. We shouldn't be over there. We shouldn't be spending fucking money over there. Some of the most ridiculous stuffs. Does cocaine make frogs more horny?
Yeah.
We're spending $2 million on that. Like, okay, $2 million is nothing in the grand scheme of things. But when you add stuff up like that, and it's 10,000 of those things, it's insanity. And that's the real issue that we have.
A common critique that I will hear from people who aren't as pro small government as I or some of you guys are is, well, who's going to build the roads? Who's going to build the schools? Like, who's going to build these?
The problem is that we approve those things. Another thing we've talked about already is in California, they instituted a gas tax that was supposed to go to infrastructure.
Right.
Then they diverted the money. Yeah. The money never went to infrastructure. It went to all these other special interests.
Yep.
Broken promises.
So they had to tax again because the infrastructure was fucked. So who's going to build the roads? Well, they're supposed to, and they already took the money to do it, but misspent it.
So let's talk about that for a second, because like the way I make a living is I have to get people who are already strapped for cash and are dealing with an economy that is not as good as it ought to be and don't have a lot of free spending money. And I have to get them, usually off of Facebook, to go on our website, stifflipsupps.com, and hit add to cart, and then take out their credit card and willingly, without a gun to their head, type in their credit card information and the CVC number and the expiration date, and then have a product arrive at their doorstep. And they do all of that freely, willingly, on their own accord.
Yep.
Now, the government model for how they extract resources from me is they take money out of my paycheck before I even see the money.
Yep.
So they get paid before the money even touches my bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And then once those funds are allocated, they then spend the money not well.
Yep.
I think the stat is private institutions spend and allocate resources 10 times more efficiently than public institutions do. And and if I don't pay them every year, armed members of the state show up at my door and say, fuck you, pay me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Kind of like the mob. So if I
The
as a business
IRS
owner,
is the mob.
could put revenue on the top line of the balance sheet by taking it out of your paycheck before you even saw the money in the first place. I could build you some really nice, pretty roads that are way better than the roads that I drive on. But, and I think that the tax money that is allocated, no different than the defense budget, we spend so much money in taxes. I just think the money needs to be allocated and spent better. And I am very wary of giving more of my resources away to the government because I don't see the resources being spent well. The analogy in my mind is a bucket with lots of holes in it. And the only solution from one side of the aisle seems to be to pour more water into the bucket. When in reality, we should stop pouring the water and fix the holes before we talk about filling it up faster.
Yeah,
I agree. You know, you give me, you know who Andrew Bustamante is?
I do.
You give me Andrew Bustamante vibes.
Yeah,
That's a very nice compliment you just gave me. That gentleman is far more well-spoken.
Possibly a plant.
You think so?
Maybe you are too.
So I'm definitely not. I learned about that guy through the Julian Doherty podcast.
Yeah, I love Julian.
I was on his podcast. He's an amazing dude, and the podcast is super cool.
You know what? Epiphany.
Okay, go.
I fucking saw you on Julian Doherty's podcast.
I was there.
I heard your story about this interconnectivity
Mhm.
of technology. I'm listening. I'm like, I've heard this before.
That was me.
And you talked about it on
Yep.
there. Holy shit.
At the time, we were send it.
Yep.
That's probably why.
I watched that podcast. I
Yep.
knew I knew more about the subject than I probably should.
Sure, right.
And I'm like, I don't know how I know this right now, but I've heard this stuff before. I think
Yep.
you even talked about what I was talking about, the line of sight, like communication.
Yep, that was my old job.
Dang, that's
But
crazy.
I like speaking
Full
of
circle.
speaking
Full
of like
circle.
Andrew Bustamante is a former CIA intelligence officer, and now has a company. I think Everyday Spy.
Everyday Spy.
I was just listening to his shit. That's a really cool guy. I try to funnel a lot of my like assessments of the public space through the framework that he lays out. And I try to do that because like he has a lot more training and knowledge base than I did in my nothing military career. Like you're talking about a dude who like was overseas collecting intelligence on like adversaries of the United States. Like to not listen to that guy, I think would be silly. Where I get concerned is like I'm very optimistic by nature. Like I think to not be bullish on America is to not be American.
And Andrew is not bullish.
He's not. And it's hard to fucking argue with that guy just because of his resume. So when I hear him talk about having secondary and tertiary passports
and
for,
leaving the country.
Yeah.
for him and his children, it's easier for me to like die with the ship because I'm just a single dude, like just me being me. But I'm sure like he's following it through the lens of like I have children
We
and I have a
will all
wife.
die with the ship together, brother.
Yeah.
You are now part of the Liberty Goons
Yeah.
family.
Sure.
You are now part of the 2A Patriot Ranch family.
Happy to be
and
here.
We do.
And you might even be on a watch list. Not our watch list, but somebody's
I already
watch
am
list.
somewhere.
So I don't know if you knew this or not, but the first person we ever put on our watch list.
Okay, what is the watch list?
So the watch list, we put people every episode, except for these last two because we've been interviewing you guys, is we put somebody on the watch list that we think needs an eye kept on them. That we're concerned about their activities, we're concerned about their past activities,
Sure.
We're concerned of what they might do in the future.
Yep.
So the first person that we put, and we felt that since the government puts us all on watch lists, that we were going to start putting people on watch
Turn
lists.
the tables a little bit, yeah. That's
So
important.
the first episode, we put Tulsi Gabbard on our watch list.
Tulsi Gabbard is who?
She was former
Congresswoman
congressperson out
from
of
Hawaii. Yep.
And then she ran for president on the Democratic ticket back in 2000.
She was on Rogan.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And she's now switched parties.
Very conservative now.
Yeah, and she's come out as conservative, and she's like pro
2A
now.
I didn't realize that, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because even when she was a Democrat, like I always really resonated with her message a lot, especially like she's a vet, like turned congresswoman, like has issues with like she did not support the Obama administration's decision to go into Syria.
Yep.
Well, that's when she actually started slightly changing, and that's why Democrats wanted to push her out.
Yep.
So we just don't know if we believe her or not, or if she's a snake in the grass.
And the real reason,
Trojan horse.
the real reason why we say that for it is because of what her votes on bills.
Yeah, 2A
Okay.
specifically.
2A specifically.
Okay.
And then coming back, now she's in this very conservative space where she's essentially saying, "Oh, I believe in the Second Amendment," but then you're not answering to, voting hardcore left wing on every single constitutional bill that's ever passed through Congress while you were in Congress,
Mhm.
which makes us feel like, I don't know.
So we put her on the watch list. Well, about 6 weeks later.
Is this watch list publicly available?
Yes.
Yes.
On libertygoons.com?
Yes.
So 6
No,
weeks,
this is crazier.
Okay.
6 weeks later, breaking news. She's added to a watch list.
An actual
Got it.
watch
Actual
list.
watch list.
Got it.
She was put into the Quiet Skies program.
Quiet Skies, where's that?
So they basically surveil you.
Yep.
You're on a fly list. It's not a no-fly list,
Crazy.
but they're watching your movements. So we have a fear that people that we either maybe have on the show or talk about on the show could be put in jeopardy
Sure.
and put on watch lists.
Unfortunately.
So
The one thing that I heard that like gives me this much hope is like the true like Orwellian surveillance state that is the CCP. I have heard from other experts, talk about how there is so much metadata. Like you're talking about a country where you can't throw a dead cat and hit a security camera.
right.
Like they have so much information that's constantly flowed through their system. We don't have they don't have the processing power to truly like comb through it to try to impose tyranny on the level that they would like to impose tyranny. So obviously it's not that bad in the
But
United
that's
States.
why we see they just do it to everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
We do it to people on watch lists.
Right, we spearfish.
So
Yeah.
I'm afraid for your safety now.
Okay.
Because you do give Andrew Bustamante vibes.
Got it.
And
I don't have the haircut. I have the opposite of the
And,
haircut. in
and
fact.
now that I have put this whole story together and you've actually been on Julian Dory's podcast,
Yeah.
which also I believe he probably puts people on watch lists, not himself, but like his
Yeah,
podcast
sure.
does. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I'm afraid for you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But it's funny that you do
No.
give those vibes. One thing that we like to do, as we finish off podcasts and stuff, is we like to give shout outs. And it can be really anything. Sometimes we're pimping products. Sometimes we're pimping ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're
I do
giving-
that a lot on.
Yeah.
You too?
Yeah.
Oh.
Sometimes we're giving shout outs
t-shirt.
to people in the industry that we
Sure.
enjoy
Yeah.
and we like.
Yeah.
So we'd love you to be a part of that today.
Yeah.
Of course.
I
I appreciate it.
usually start off, and normally I'm the one pimping products.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah.
I just pimp out the Liberty Goons merch.
Yeah. So, my shout out today is actually not going to be pimping products that I have an association with, but just to all of the vendors that are down at Goals right now.
Yeah.
All of them have been super kind to us.
Yep.
We interviewed 2 CEOs of major gun companies today,
Crazy.
like us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. Shout out to Shadow Systems and Ross Martin,
Yep.
who literally just like hand fed us their CEOs to do these
That's dope.
interviews.
Yep.
That's cool.
So shout out to them. And the shout out I always do is if you're carrying a firearm, you carry a knife, and you don't have self-defense coverage, you're doing it wrong. You got to go with Right to Bear. $17 a month.
Yep.
Cost
Not
of a
bad.
Domino's pizza.
Yeah.
Go over to Protect with Bear, use the code 2APR, get yourself a little discount. Those guys are killer. If you happen to be in Knoxville right now, they have a little booth set up over at Goals. Highly encourage you to go check them out. So,
Mhm.
Yep.
Don, what you got?
I mean, I'm just gonna say this. One, thank you for coming on this
Of course,
show.
man. Thank you for having me.
I greatly appreciate it. I mean, I have even more questions to even ask you. So
We might have to do a part 2.
Yeah.
I'm about that.
Yeah. Now that we've talked, I'm like, the whole entire time, my head's just spinning because I have so many questions I'd like to ask you. But so one, my shout out is to you, and obviously, Stiff Lip. Go get you some Stiff Lip. But mine is going to be to the families that actually showed up at Goals today with
Yes.
their kids, because like you said, you know, you saw the little kid with the no finger on the trigger, like proper, you know, trigger control, the whole 9 yards, and just being safe about it. Even though obviously it's not even a real gun, but it just to see that, it's incredible.
It's good.
But to see these families who really care, not even just about not even just the Second Amendment, but really care about America, and they're trying to teach their kids
Yep.
in a system that is so corrupt by the education system that is teaching kids every single day to hate America, unfortunately. So it's minus to every single parent and family that took their kid to goals and is trying to raise their kids right. Maybe I'm a little, you know, because I'm about to have a kid, maybe it makes me feel a certain way, but
No, you should feel that way, man.
What's your shout out, man?
Well, I'm a walking billboard right now.
I love it.
I got
I
this,
love it.
this base Dipper Die T-shirt.
I'm loving the hat
and
too.
then this hat that you can get on stifflipsups.com. But my shout out is going to be to the hardworking Americans that we have the honor of caffeinating. I think that there's a lot of talk about how this country is falling and how our best days are behind us. I could not think that is further from the truth. I think our best days are ahead of us. And I get more proof of that every single day, that there are hardworking patriots that we have the honor of caffeinating, and we get to put a tool in their tool belt to work more 12-hour shifts and sit in patrol cars longer and stand in formation for shit they didn't do for extended periods of time. And I know that those people work hard, and they do it for people they love and children they're going to have, and to pay bills that are necessary. And I've always believed that those things are more alive and well than they ever have been. But I have proof in front of me now that with data and numbers behind it, that is not only a big part of America, but the biggest part. And when we say it is our honor to caffeinate those people, I mean it, because I think those are going to be the people that right the ship.
yeah.
God bless you and Stiff Rips Ups.
I appreciate it, bro.
That's the silent majority that everybody
Yep,
speaks about.
agreed.
Yep.
Beautiful way of putting it.
Yep.
Do you want to tell everybody what to do?
Hey guys, one, I want you to make sure that you guys like, comment, subscribe, hit
Absolutely.
the bell on this. Make sure that you guys check out obviously Stiff Lips, Liberty Goons, 2A Patriot Ranch, and guys,
We
Liberty
are
Goons.
the Liberty Goons, and we are out.